I was put onto this in a conversation this week with somebody who supplies drones to the Ukrainian army. And he said, we can get drones to the army and we can continue to get drones to the army, even if the Americans continue to effectively take Russia's side in this war. That's fine. Babies, that's more difficult.
You've uncovered some shocking statistics here. I just had absolutely no idea what's going on. I mean, obviously, young men are getting killed and young women are getting killed in the war in Ukraine, but there are other reasons for this population shrinkage as well, aren't there?
You can think of it in a few ways. One is the cost of war, as you mentioned. Another is the fact that about 7 million Ukrainian refugees are living abroad, and also 5 million Ukrainians are living under Russian occupation. So between those three things, the war, the refugees, and the occupation, this is a very rare war where two countries with a median age in their population above 40 are fighting a war. In demographic terms, this is very, very strange. Usually wars are fought between populations with combustible and surplus young men to fling into battles. In this case, both Russia and Ukraine have plunging fertility rates, very high mortality rates, even before this war started. And so, yes, there's definitely a sense in Ukraine anyway, that Russia is taking territory and taking people and trying to turn them into Russians in the same way that the Ottoman Empire used to take Christian children and change their religion and turn them into the guards of the sultans. That was one example that Ukrainian gave me. That is how they feel about what Russia is doing.
It's really interesting. We've heard in your report that the Ukrainian government is doing things like funding fertility treatment, offering to freeze sperm of soldiers on the front line. And you spoke to one mother, Yaroslava Upatova, about her experience of deciding to have a baby in the midst of war.
Yes, and she spoke about the kind of fears that you might associate with having a child in these circumstances, but also, and this is common to so many Ukrainians, why she's just not going to give up.
It was so loud and so scary, but yeah, I'm scary for my boy for sure. But what I can change, I don't want to left everything, my life, what I can do for my country because I'm scary. No, I left my home in 2014 and I will not left my home right now because no, we need to stop it.
She doesn't regret having a child. She had a child last October, a very sweet little 4-month-old boy called Damien with blue eyes and scratchy blonde hair. And here she is again.
No, because I don't know how long will be war in Ukraine. Maybe it will be 5 years, 10 years. So in 10 years, I will be not so easy to have a child. And then what I will be thinking, okay, maybe I will be doing this. This is this stupid war. It didn't give me a chance to have a child. No, everything in my hand. That's my life, not the life of Russian or somebody. They will not influence me. They already have influence like my life with this stupid war. So why they will influence my decisions? No.
That really brings it home, Will. Thank you. I mean, it just makes you wonder what it's like trying to not just bring up small children in a war zone, but also the challenges that maternity hospitals are facing in providing care in these war-torn conflict zones. You've been speaking to some of the people who've been trying to do just that, haven't you?
Yeah, I went to meet the CEO of a maternity hospital called Lalika, which means stork in Ukrainian, just outside Kyiv. You know, in February 2022, this was a war zone. There were Russians crawling around the forest nearby here. And he explained the difficulties of the medicine we associate with childbirth at this time.
The maternity is more conservative, and you think that it's nothing changing, only that you understand that you must be ready and to make the delivery in the hour, this shelter, because during this, we must have the possibility to work without electricity, but you understand that it's impossible. We must keep the diesel for 180 kilowatts and keep, you understand that when I came in the job, I say that how many this diesel we have in our stock. In any days, you must be ready to live at least 24 hours without electricity.
That's the chief executive of the Lalika Maternity Hospital. Well, I mean, just one big question here. Is there a feasible prospect of Ukraine running out of enough people to prosecute this war It might have the weapons, but it just simply doesn't have the manpower to do it.
Well, this is interesting because nobody in Ukraine that I've spoken to after 5 days being here expects this war to end in any way. Okay, so they're forced to the table, they capitulate. Everybody is still training. I spent yesterday just with young men, just training in the forest. Everybody's expecting the war to continue. Okay, so if there's a peace deal and you see Trump shaking hands with Putin and Zelensky, everybody here is still training and getting their weapons ready. So yes, it then becomes a question of how many people does Ukraine need? How long is it going to be fighting for in the future? And if it's a bad peace deal, if it's the kind of peace deal I've just described, where there isn't a security guarantee for Ukraine, that means that those 7 million people who live abroad, millions of them, in fact, are women and children. They probably won't come back. They'll probably stay away from Ukraine. And then you do get into these questions of what does Ukraine look like in 2040? What does it look like in 2035? Will it have the sheer number of people to protect itself? And to me, that really is the story behind the stories we've seen all week. These are the real existential questions that the government here is well aware of. Everybody here is well aware of this. It really is a battle for the survival of the country in a very real way.
Will, thank you so much for bringing us that insight from Ukraine. Fascinating angle on what's happening out there. That's Will Lloyd from The Times, who's been out in Ukraine talking about the desperately depopulation and then the falling birth rates in that country.
It's a really, really powerful story. And I think it's a really important points that Will was making there, particularly at the end, about sort of what happens to the future of Ukraine. I've interviewed an awful lot of Ukrainian refugees for the paper, and it was very interesting. At the beginning of the war, there was a great sense of people saying that they were determined to go back and rebuild. And obviously, the longer it goes on, the longer,
people change,
people
don't
are
they?
away.
Yeah.
Well, people settle in other places.
They have other priorities
and the
that
question is,
suddenly come up.
what do they go back to, you know, with the level of destruction? I'd say, like, I was in Kyiv last summer, and you know, you got this great sense of a city that was incredibly modern and incredibly vibrant and had really hoped to be, you know, at some point having a prospect of joining the EU, you know, really, really modernising. And I think that's just been completely blown out of the water. And as well we're saying, you know, population decline, prospects for the future, you know, you're looking at that kind of plan, maybe not getting back on track economically and socially for decades. This war has set that country back in ways that, you know, no one could have predicted 5 years ago. It's really extraordinary.
Well, we talk about how COVID has changed this country and the effects that it's had. You can only really see with the distance of time exactly how it is going to change. And I think Ukraine's just going through that process at the moment with, you know, the fact that it's still being bombed on a daily basis.